Good morning everyone, my name is Vardan Kabra. I am co-founder of Fountainhead School in Surat. We are an IB continuing school. We have 2,300 plus students at this point and we're still growing. Also to give you a quick background of myself, I graduated from IIT Bombay in 2002 and then went to IMA in 2004. And my wife and I co-founded Fountainhead and started this in 2005. So we've been in education for nearly 20 years and our intent to get into education was to look at education very differently. And I have studied in 11 schools across India. I've studied in 11 schools across India, literally all parts of India, and at many boards of education as well, so I have a varied experience, and in fact that was the propelling reason for me to get into education, because I wanted to look at education very differently. Today morning Professor Manish Jain spoke about bringing joy back, and that was one of my first. I was a good student academically, but I didn't enjoy education. I was really bored with it, especially by the time I was in high school. I was like, okay, reading the textbook and going and giving exams, but not really enjoying education and being excited about it as I think we should be. And that, again, Professor Jain talked about that spark in the eyes of the students. So that's something that we wanted to bring back. So that's the background. But today we're going to talk about a model of education or a pedagogical framework called the project-based learning. Many of you would have heard about it, maybe many of you are practicing it in your schools. So we want to get a little deeper into what it is and very importantly how we can integrate it within the curriculum framework. So not okay, it's something that we do beyond what we are already doing, but try and bring it into the classroom on a regular basis. So that's what we're going to focus on in today's session. But we're going to start.
नहीं होता
Okay, we are going to work within the constraints, and as all educators know, we all have constraints within which we have to make the best of things. So let's try to do that for us, because I have an activity for which I'm going to get all of you to stand towards the wall. Okay, all of you are going to get up from your seats and stand towards the wall. As I give you instructions, you will react to those instructions, and I'll tell you what those instructions are once you do that. Nalina, I'm okay with you as well?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I'm making everyone work a little bit. It is a workshop, so you've got to work a little bit. Maybe not as much. No, facing the wall. It's okay. It's okay.
Or you need to face.
It's not a punishment. It's not a punishment. Give you a prompt, and if you agree with the prompt, you're going to step forward. So it's simple, as simple as that. It's not very challenging. You're going to step forward if you agree with the prompt, and if you disagree, you stand where you are standing. Okay. So my first prompt is that. So the bigger theme is this PBL or not? Okay, is this project-based learning or not? So that's what you're trying to answer here, and I'm going to give you an activity, and if you agree that this is PBL, you will step forward, otherwise you will remain standing where you are. Okay? Everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, so asking students to make charts or models of the solar system from home. Okay, if this is PBL, please step forward. Okay? If you think this is project-based learning, please step forward. Okay? Okay. If students are asked to make a presentation,
You can go back to your place.
you can go back to your place. If students are asked to make a presentation on the types of government systems and show it to the class, is this PBL or is this not PBL? Okay? It's okay. We don't have to agree. We don't have to agree to do it. Everyone doesn't have to do the same thing. We're just trying to understand.
You clearly stand near the chair so that
Yes.
you know that is that a PBL.
You agree with this prompt.
That's
Okay.
Nobody will be that.
Thank you. Back to your seats. your legal walls. Back to the walls. Okay. If you were to run a simulation of a barter system to help, say, primary kids understand the value of money, would you call it project-based learning or not? Okay, so a lot of people stepping forward on that one. Yeah, so just we're trying to see what's our common understanding of the room. Okay, thank you. Go back. If you were to do a science fair and get students to make working models which demonstrate scientific principles, would you call that project-based learning or not? Okay, somewhat of a mixed response. Somewhat of a mixed response in this case. Thank you. Go back. If you were to do a guest session and an excursion to the forest and guest session with the forest officer to understand the role of, on a topic on sustainability, would you call that project-based learning or not?
Are they doing something after that also?
So that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying more than that. I'm not saying more than that. So would you call this project-based learning or not? So ma'am, you don't want to call this project-based learning. Well, fair enough. That's absolutely what we're trying to look at. Okay. I have two more prompts. Okay. I have two more prompts only. Student-led event to celebrate the National Mathematics Day, which coincides with Ramanujan's birthday, where students put up a lot of mathematical games, applications, challenges. Would you call that project-based learning or not? Okay, thank you. Last prompt. Okay, please go back. My last prompt. Okay. Students take up, along with the school support, they adopt a nearby lake to understand the problems, the pollution, hyacinth, all of that. They adopt it and they take a long-term project to clean it up, working with the local authorities. Would that be project-based learning or not? Okay, now that's the only prompt I think where we see universal agreement across the room. So now you can try and understand. Thank you.
Okay, that's so much better. Thank you. You can now take your seats. Ma'am, I want you to come forward because I need you to pitch in with the discussion, and that's true for everyone. Just come in forward. Okay. I'm going to ask you, ma'am, to share why you thought the example that we gave was not PBL, and then talk about. So you can use the mic. You can switch it. So the excursion and the interaction with the forest officer. So excursion to the forest and interaction. Okay.
That, you expose a child to something or not, but thereafter the child has to, think about it, create something, or maybe present it to the class, or maybe have something, a documentation of that. Based on that, whatever is learned. So I feel that was missing according to me. That was a mistake.
So what you're saying is that an outcome, a real product or an outcome was missing if it is only restricted to the visit or the discussion.
Because then we will not know whether the child has actually understood what was our purpose of taking the child over there.
So that can still be done. There always could be a small presentation or even an assessment, graphical organizer, anything.
Yeah.
You could still do that. But is there another difference that someone would like to share that they would think, yes, good, please?
I think, as you mentioned, there's a guest speaker, but apart from that, there are other elements, whether probably interviewing the speaker or also having more queries and exploring other aspects and getting answers to that as well. That would probably, in my opinion, complete the PBL aspect.
Okay. Why was there pretty much universal agreement on the last example of adopting the lake and working with the local authorities to clean it up? Would someone like to share? Yeah.
Solution based. It was more like the solution based. They gave some kind of a logic or some kind of a solution to a problem. So that's why it is a project based.
To have more empathy with the,
Yes.
have more empathy and experience, and then looking for the
solutions.
Absolutely.
The objectives are very clear.
Absolutely. Okay. So I think what we're trying to, I don't think that what we're saying here is that the other examples that we gave, there is anything wrong with those learning methods or pedagogical ways. It is just that when we talk about project-based learning, there is a certain, there are different definitions, and you can look at, you can say this is also project-based learning and that's also project-based learning. But the approach from which we are coming, and this track is coming. Yesterday also we had a discussion around this, that when we're talking about project-based learning, there needs to be a driving question. Ideally, that should be coming from the students rather than it being implanted by the teacher saying that this is what we're going to be doing. You may be operating within the framework of a unit or of a context, and that is okay. But the driving question of what we want to solve needs to come from the students. So ideally, now these are all ideal factors that we're looking at. And ideally there should be a real audience or a real problem that you're solving. So you're solving, if you're making the lake a better place, obviously you are contributing to the society, you're making your city, town, wherever you are a better place. So there is a very clear purpose that you're achieving. And yesterday we had a session with Lieutenant General Kulkarni and Arijit Ghosh, and they said very clearly, there has to be a public good at the end of it. Now I'm not saying there will always be a public good, but at least there is a product that there is a real audience for. I mean, think about it this way, there is a client that you are serving. If you're doing that, and in the real, if you're adults, they would be willing to pay you for it, then that is the ideal definition of a project-based learning. That's where we are starting off with saying that that's where we can be going. Not every unit that we are doing can go there because there are limitations of time, content. Like maths, for example, it's very difficult to keep doing real life based problem solving, say with linear algebra beyond a point. I mean, you can do some amount of application to situations, but you can't do more than that with a project based learning situation. So let's move on. Okay, so actually just go to the next slide and then I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to show you a quick short video on some of the ways that we integrate project-based learning at our school.
We have both the options available. The students can decide on their own to opt for which project they want to do, as well as they can collaborate with the facilitators and do the faculty-led project with them and come to a common outcome.
Yeah, of course, when we're talking about PBL, it is about increasing engagement of the students. And moreover, it's about giving voice, choice and ownership while incorporating student agency in the students. So it's a very important and crucial aspect as we begin the PBL to give that choice to the students to take an option, to have an option to actually choose what they want to go ahead with. That's the entire crux or purpose of incorporating PBL in our classrooms.
The PBL approach at Fountainhead School is an open approach wherein the students do select some of the subtopics and they work on their projects ahead.
For a particular unit to be chosen as PBL, the first aim is that it should have a real life application, and along with that, to the maximum extent possible, the students or the teachers through the project should be able to solve a real life problem for that.
So PBL basically it's a pedagogy that we all teachers love. The main reason for that being that it kind of bridges the gap between the classroom and the real world. A lot of times we teachers try very hard to bring real world situations into the classrooms. We try our level best, but when students actually experience what is happening in the real world, they actually come up with solutions that is in their hands and in their capacities through PBL, and that's a way more and way wider exposure to the students to solve these issues.
The greenhouse project which our students are doing in the fields of innovation, the students are actually designing a greenhouse for farmers which will help them enhance their production as well as maintain the sustainability of the same.
The biggest highlight of the PBL approach in PYP is the autonomy which the students have and the way the students work in collaboration and they showcase brilliant teamwork. So I think that's the biggest highlight of the
PBL approach? The biggest highlight and also an achievement I feel is when students are taking charge of their learning and there's actual action that they can do which is in their capacities. That is, I think, the entire crux of taking it forward and also students implementing it in their lives.
As facilitators, the biggest challenge that we face while inculcating a PBL is having the sustained inquiry for a prolonged period of that entire project. Having a sustained inquiry is a bit challenging task, thus the teachers and the mentors have to design a project in that way that the students are interested and their enthusiasm doesn't decrease through the period of the months.
I think challenges are a part and parcel of everything that we do. The most recent of the challenges that we face are in terms of time, planning and occasional setbacks that may come with the nature of the PBL that we are planning. But a planning that is done well in advance and we have contingency planning for everything that if something does not fall into place, what are we going to do, really helps out in cancelling out those errors in the later phase of the PBL. And we should be prepared for any setbacks. I think that's an opportunity for learning for each one of us.
PBL is not a form of education, but it's a complete change in mindset that will help students enhance their journey and learn through the journey rather than just learning the topics. So through PBL, I would recommend every school to adopt that so that they can enhance the journey of learning for the students.
Alright, so that's a glimpse to what we're doing with project-based learning at our school. But I also want to talk about about 5-6 years back. So we are an IB school. I spoke about that, and within the IB project-based learning, there is a lot of inquiry, experiential learning as a part of the pedagogy in any case. Now, one thing, however, that we wanted to change even within that system was to say that okay, can students be solving real problems on a sustained basis? Because otherwise, if you're doing units for a very short period of time and then moving on to the next thing, you're not really being able to use that and apply it to real life situations. You can't do that. So about 5 years back, we started a school within a school, like a program within the school called the Maverick Learning Center. And this is a purely project-based setup where students don't have a fixed timetable for anything other than maths and English. All other subjects are learned through projects, and that's what one of the facilitators was speaking about. So they can either take up facilitator-led projects or they have to pitch their own project. I want to do a design project of building a telescope, or I want to do a business consultancy project. And these are all real life examples, a real example that students came up with. So they have to join one of those. There are learning outcomes which are focused on skills rather than content. So if you're doing a science project, then you need to learn how to be able to hypothesize, design an experiment, build a hypothesis, run the experiment, do observations about it, evaluate your results, and then come up with your conclusion based on that particular overall understanding of what you're doing with respect to that particular science concept or unit. Now that is where the focus shifts from trying to just learn or mug up a bunch of information, whether it is in science or in social studies and so on and so forth, to trying to really learn skills, which is where PBL shines at a longer stage. So as we ran this program for the Maverick Learning Center for about 5-6 years, we realized that we can bring in a lot of those learning into our regular classes for the rest of the students. We obviously can't do it in the same depth and pace as other students do it, but that's something that we try to do. And this is one of the things that we want people to understand, that when we speak about a project-based learning, that and there are a lot of resources which are available online around this particular concept. And then we spoke about desert yesterday. So desert is something that you just do at the end of it, whereas a PBL is something that is your whole sole purpose of doing that particular unit. So you're starting with that in mind. You may not know exactly what your product is. You may not know exactly what you're going to achieve, but you start with the idea of solving a real life problem. Can you move on to the next slide? And then the differences. So if you look at the left side and the right side, desert is doing a project versus main course learning becoming the project-based learning. So just some examples I'll talk about there. The desert becomes an add-on to traditional instruction, typically at the end or sometimes alongside the unit. Whereas the project-based learning approach is the instruction is integrated into the project, and the project is the unit. So it's not that the unit and the project are two different things, but it is integrated very, very deeply. Following the direction of teachers versus driven by student inquiry, focused on the product versus focused on the product and process. And this is something that we spoke about yesterday in the track as well. And again, that student inquiry, student agency, having a real audience, all of those things are really important. So that comes up next actually. Often unrelated to standards and skills versus aligned to academic standards and success skills. Can be completed alone or at home, involves collaboration with students and in-class guidance from teachers. So things, if you can make, if the projects that you thinking about are models or things that students are making at home or on their own, then that's not PBL in a true format. You are doing it in class, you're doing it in together, you need guidance, you have real life situations. Yesterday we had a session with Akshal where we looked at real problem and solving it in class together. And it's not going to happen, all of it is not going to happen in one session also. It requires sustained inquiry over a period of time. The desert remains within the school world. The main course, project-based learning, has a real-world context and application that goes beyond the school. The desert format is end result of project displayed in the classroom. We just put up an exhibition, maybe a presentation, and that's the end of story. Whereas the project-based learning really should go as a, it goes to the beyond the classroom with the public audience. And I'll give you an example of, I think Parminder here spoke about some projects that they did, but like as part of their projects where they put together a booklet of, say, the birds of an area or the history of a particular area, like the Surat Fort, or in Delhi, I think you've done it with Qutub Minar, so those places. Now, if you put together a the product out of it, there is a bigger audience for it. Now, it's a different matter how many people are going to read it and use it, but the effort is towards building something that can contribute to society. That is the mindset that you start with. You may not get there, you may not have any real world actual impact and output, but the empowerment that students have in that process is a very different ballgame altogether. They feel like they're doing something unique and important. Like our one big group of students, almost 30-35 of them right now, are working on a project with INTAC, which is the archaeological, they do a lot of preservation work. And they're working with them to list bunch of Surat heritage sites on the heritage listing, World Heritage listing. So it's a long process, it's a lot of work. They're raising awareness, they're going on heritage walks with parents and other audiences to help raise awareness. Now that, the real impact, there is a focus. Now whether we achieve it or not is another matter. We may not be able to do any listing, and that's okay, because the effort, the process is where the learning is, where the empowerment is. So, what we're trying to do also here is make a difference, clarify this difference between experiential learning, problem-based, and PBL, or project-based learning. So, some of the examples that we spoke about, whether it is hands-on sessions inside the classroom, whether it is trips, guest sessions, are experiential learning sessions, and they are fantastic. They are necessary for us to start off in the direction of progressive pedagogy. So it is necessary. But that alone, as I was going back to the example with ma'am, if you just do a field trip and a guest session with a forest officer, you're not really getting into problem solving mode there. You are doing an experiential learning, and it is fantastic if you do it in the context of sustainability. And the reality also is that you cannot do PBL for every unit. It is impossible to do sustained deep inquiry, project, solve real problems for every chapter, for every subject, for every unit. So that is not an expectation that we have within our school, or to anyone that would ask us that, okay, how much of PBL should we be doing? But can all units be experiential? Can they be hands-on? Can they be making things, doing things? Absolutely yes. That's very much possible. Of course, within limitation of the subject areas. If it's language, you will do lesser of hands-on, but you will do creative writing, you will do recitation, you will do competitions around that. So those are still possible. Problem-based are sort of simulated problems where you might give a situation that, okay, farmer, and we have one of those examples in our booklet which we'll talk about, but a farmer faces these situations. And if you were a science student, how would you, science or a math student, what are the ways in which you may solve that problem? So you are simulating a real life situation, creating a problem out of it, creating a task out of it, which the students might complete in one period or maybe 2 periods. So you will work together, collaborate, and you're solving it. You're not really solving the farmer's problem, because that requires going out to farmers, meeting them, talking to them, really helping them with solution, because that's a difficult long-term process and it's not going to happen everywhere. But it's a good next step towards project-based learning. And the third level is where we spoke about, we've taken examples of solving real problems for a real client and audience. So that's the level that we're looking at. Okay, and that's where the differences between the examples that we were taking up come in as per one framework or the framework that we're looking at. Okay, can I now ask you to open these booklets that you have on your table, and if you look at page number 4, yeah, what we have done is we have given examples of experiential learning. So where the first example is about sorting materials into groups on the basis of their on their properties. So if you see, they're divided into workstations and they have a bunch of objects and then a bunch of experiment that they will do along with those objects to figure out what are the properties of those materials and how to classify them, what will they be used for. So that's an experiential learning example. We're not asking them to solve a real world problem. We're trying to help them understand the properties of materials using hands-on, experiments, hands-on workstations. Okay. If you now look at the second example, page number 9, it talks about creating an interactive guide about educational rights and law. Now, we all have, and probably the civics part of our curriculum is one of the most difficult to make interesting and, bring it out. And you can do it through many ways. If you just leave it as a textbook and reading activity, it becomes the most drab thing. You have to learn the responsibilities of the vice president, or you have to, what are the concurrent and the laws, things like that. Now that becomes very boring. Can we convert this into a more experiential setup? So many of the speakers here have spoken about using videos, and this is one of the examples of creating a video around the educational rights and laws. And when you do that, again, you get a more deeper insight, you're interacting with the content. That's again example of an experiential learning example. This is not a PBL. Please understand, this is not a PBL. You're not really solving anyone's problem. You're not going and advocating the rights of, say, students for RT. Now, if they were to do that, that would be a PBL that can come out of this unit, that can work from this unit. Similarly, with the sorting of materials, understanding properties, we did our grade 9 last year, went around the school, identified problems that they can see with materials and their usage within the school surrounding, and then came up with problems to solve. So one of their problems was like this one. We have too much glare at times and too much, so then when we are working on our screens, we are unable to see. So, but we also want some light to come in. So now what is the right sort of curtains that should be put up, or sound is a problem, or the right ventilation is a problem. Now these are problems that they were trying to solve through their understanding of materials. And they did a 3-month project on this particular aspect. Now if you look at page number 11, we are now moving on to problem-based learning. And this is around, see, this grade 7 science around the units of temperature and heat. And these are all examples we've taken from the CBSE context rather than taking it from the IB context so that it applies to a broader audience. So the task is that you are a member of an NGO which aims to make life easy for farmers by applying their knowledge of science. And one of the tasks given is keeping water cool for longer period of time in a plastic bottle. So now this example, you will have all of these materials given to you and you put it together, applying your knowledge of the conductivity, the latent heat, all of those things, you will put together a solution to this particular problem. That's the expectation that you have with the student. On page number 13, we have an example of a project-based learning. And this is something which I'm sure all of us will be able to connect to. It was also one of the examples that was discussed yesterday in our tracks, is that if you have to, around waste management and governance, we can build a project where students have gone around and seen the amount of waste generated in their own school, maybe in their own society, and then try and find solutions to it. So where are we generating? Are we segregating it well? Many cities now have initiatives to segregate waste and make sure that it goes into the right bin. Is that happening? They can audit that process. In some societies, in some schools, it would be happening well. In others, it wouldn't be happening well. But you're bringing out waste management and governance, because local authorities get involved in this, out of the textbook into real discussions. And that's where they are actually expected to solve this problem. Now, whether they're able to actually make a dent or not will depend on how much, what sort of time and support is given by the school, by the teacher in that whole process. If you look at the second part of this, the 13-page bottom, community outreach. Students will be required to research about officials in the local community as well as in the government who are responsible to follow up on waste management tracking. They will speak to these officials through visits to their offices, guest sessions and panel discussions, and then they will take action in bringing about a change in the school community and their local communities with respect to waste management practices with support from the school and the government officials. Now, when we are expecting this is when it becomes a real project-based learning. It is, once again I'm saying, this is not something we can do with every unit, every subject, every year. Maybe these are the kind of projects where even if you do 1, maximum 2 in a year per grade, I think that is fantastic because you don't need to do more than that. Like maybe one is more around science, one is more around social studies, rather than doing everything, every unit in that way. Other units can absolutely be experiential, can absolutely be problem-based, as we looked at those examples. Now, this is where, now you don't need to move in this direction further. Now, we are going to get you to do some work on your own. If you were to be given a unit from a NCERT, how could you think about it in either experiential learning or a problem-based, or if you can, move it into a project-based learning setup, that would be even fantastic. Okay, so I will... Subbalakshmi here and Suparna are handing you out the actual chapters from the NCERT textbook. List of chapters, subjects and topics which are being handed out to you. If you want one of these specifically, you can, based on your interest area or subject interest, you can actually pick one of these. And then on page, on the first... this is the third page. On the third page itself, you have something like looks like this: chapter name, and then there are 3 columns: problem-based learning, experiential learning, and project-based learning. If you had to convert this is on the booklet, the outreach booklet. Yeah, the chapter is separate, and then the outreach booklet is separate. So if you had to convert this, I'll take questions. Yes, go ahead, ma'am. Go ahead. What's your question? Logistically, if we can keep it within a year, it is more manageable. Next year teachers change हो जाती हैं, बच्चे change हो जाते हैं, those, then we run into logistical issues of how to manage that. So it would be good to have a time frame. It could be as short as, I wouldn't say shorter than 6 weeks, but it could be as long as 6 months. Now that is more than enough time to, and somewhere you will have some students who want to continue and carry on that project. A smaller number of individuals, you can support that outside the classroom rather than within the classroom. So that would be good to do, but it would be good to have some amount of timeline. Otherwise, these are the kind of projects that can go on and on without any real output. So to get that output, see, it's a real world project. In real world also you have deadlines and timelines that you set, whether it is externally set or internally set. So that's the effort you need to make. Okay, everyone clear with the task? We will share a few examples once you've made this effort. We will share a few examples and see whether we are on the right track of what we are trying to do here. Okay? We are all here to support you. Suparna, Subbalakshmi and I are here to help you out. If you have any questions, we'll come to you and help you out with this work. You don't have to work necessarily in pair. If you are happy to work on your own, you like. But if you want to collaborate, definitely. You need help, we are happy to help you out. I just need to have good ideas. You can check this one. You want this one? So we have all of these subjects. You can take anyone which you are comfortable with. If you are not comfortable with
of the chapters.
it depends. Done. You feel ready to share something with the group, with the class. You had a question? All right. Who would like to share their ideas? We don't have to be right or wrong. We're just trying to learn here. So, yeah. You got something right. You're happy about it. Go ahead. You can use the mic there. Yes.
Okay. So I picked up media and democracy. So, and what are the views about it? In the experiential learning, what the kids are going to do is they're going to be journalists, they're going to be editors, they're going to interview them and find out their view about all of this. Second, they're also going to look at the financial models of these newspapers and things to see that the people who are giving ads to them or sponsoring them, do they also get called out for something wrong that they do? So the children are going to collate all that and bring it. And in project-based learning, what will be the authentic audience for this possible project will definitely be public, where they will be now creating awareness in the public on the source of media, and they will look at ways that they can hold the media accountable for reporting wrong.
Fantastic. So I think that's a great example. See, in audiences, I think there are lots of options. That's also important to understand. This can be absolutely a public good. The students can even create a small website or an Insta page or whatever, so that they can keep posting all of this bits of information. So for the public good, the parents can be an audience. Within the school, you can have other students as audiences. Sometimes you are the older students and you will present this to the younger students. educating them about the risk and challenges of, say, in this case, false news. Maybe it could be risk and challenges of overuse of social media or digital tools. So all of these are valid audience methods. Fantastic. Thank you for the example. Yes, sir. You want to share an example, sir? Go ahead, sir.
Well, for any project-based learning, you need to have an incubation platform. So what we did as a success story, which I was just telling my friend here, you need to create another school. So what we did at Indus was we created a community school within the campus. And that community school was basically from the children from the local villages. And we had 500 of them. So how does this school, that's the main school, support this school in every way? So what we did was we had 4 houses. Our houses are Orion, Hercules, Pegasus. And so we said, you choose what you want to do for this school. The students chose the task and the project. So one took the library to set up a library, one set up the science lab, one took the kitchen, and one did the 5 acres of land which we had adjacent to it. So we gave them a 1-year period. And we said, we will give you a seed capital of 1 lakh initially, but whatever is, you have to get in through fund. So you won't believe this house is of around 300 or 250 children in each house. They worked for the entire year and set it up by the end of the year. That was a project which was, today that school is one of the best schools in the country, a community school with all the facilities set up by students. And the only thing what we started teaching children from grade 1 till grade 12 is mind mapping. And this mind mapping works like miracle. Every child knows what a mind mapping is. And if you can train your children in mind mapping, any project can be done. So that is how this, and we had started in all our schools on this nature. Thank you.
So, Indus, Sir represents Indus School, has been associated for a long time. They've done fantastic work. It would be fantastic if most schools of all schools can get such opportunities, to set up schools. I think that's a great, fantastic way of giving real audience, real work to them, and they're doing meaningful work. The students understand that they're actually helping kids in a very meaningful manner through all of these initiatives. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that example, sir. Who else would? So we have a maths example coming in there on symmetry. Let's hear that.
Yeah, so I've generally found that maths is one of the more difficult things to convert to a project. So I had a symmetry chapter. The possible ways that I looked at it is symmetry. Where do you find? Generally find in nature, find in art, right? So we have to move and break the maths ka barrier here if we want to really understand symmetry. You look at it very, in the confines of maths, this doesn't work. So one way that we were discussing that can be done is you start off a project. The day 1, you say that you show them, a good video of top artists and have a general discussion ki how art, or you can take them to an art exhibition, go to and then have a discussion on how symmetry has been broken or not broken, and then say that, okay, in 65 or 6 weeks from today, we are going to have an art exhibition where each group of 3 students is going to put up their artwork, will invite parents, where the core theme is symmetry, right? Any sort of symmetry, and that becomes their core project, and they all then divide up into, and then that becomes our core project from which the symmetry learning is taken up as, then the learning can happen.
So fantastic. I think that's a great idea where you have a very clear output at the end. This is what you're expected to do. We'll do this together as a class. These are our options. How can we apply our understanding and knowledge? We have to learn symmetry to be able to apply it to the art exhibition. So that's a fantastic way. Did someone have food and nutrition or somewhere around that you want to share? Yes.
What I wanted to share was that there will be a project in which the outcome is that what food is being brought to the school in the school visit. You encourage more localized eating, and you create food maps to educate your parents and your other community members that these are the food grains which is more localized, which also encourages sustainable farming, which encourages sustainable eating. So that's the idea, that in order to promote sustainability, we are teaching them how to actually manage their own food sources.
Absolutely. And if you can always do an exhibition, run it at the end where you actually have those food options available, invite the parents, invite a larger community, taste those foods.
You can even do like, some things, create new dishes. So
Absolutely.
that could be a part of problem-based and experiential learning. How do you create dishes out of the same ingredients and increase the palate?
And when you have the exhibition, the students are expected to talk about the nutritional value as well as the cultural roots of that particular food object. So in reality, you would end up covering 3-4 different units of that particular year. So the amount of time that goes in teaching and learning 3-4 units can be spent by doing this. And we've done this work with our students and 1 or 2 schools that we're working with. We see that the standard assessments of question and answer format is also something where the retention is much higher because you were engaged with those facts and topics and you're able to actually do better, if not better, at least equally well as you would be doing otherwise. But you will have learned so much more in the process of collaboration, communication, putting things together, and the empowerment that students have at the end of such projects is altogether different, of a different quality.
So one of the experiences, or in fact one of the problems that gets solved for the food unit was encouraging the Dang farmers. They were millet farmers, so getting people in the local community more aware of millets and helping generate revenue for the Dang farmers. So that's what I was talking about when I was getting at problem solving.
Alright, so we are now, as track co-chair, I cannot afford to go beyond time. While I would like to take a lot more responses and have a little discussion about it, I'm happy to do so after 1 o'clock after this session if any one of you would like to do. Our team is also going to be here. But we want to hand over the floor to Vinesh, is there, and Akshay. Yeah, you're happy if you, I think this works well. We'll close that unless there is a presentation also. Okay. The slides are on, ma'am. You can switch them on if you wish. Yeah? Yeah.
Firstly, can we all hear for Vardan and the fantastic team at Fountainhead? I think it takes a little bit of a courage to share all of your IP out there open, and we've been able to create all of it on our own. But thank you so much for this venture where he's just sharing it out for the good of the world. So that really calls for applause. With that, we'd like to transition into the final session of our track, which is going to be led by the dashing Mr. Vinesh Menon. He's right there, difficult to miss. Right, he's the CEO of Ampersand Group. He'll be joined by my senior from my college, from ISB, Mr. Devidat. He was the CEO of Radcliffe. He's just transitioned to a new role. Maybe you can introduce yourself. And also Ms. Kamaljeet ma'am, who's the principal of Sabor Public School. We are unable to, we have Dr. Ashok Vaid with us. He has a medical emergency, but Vinesh will take that up. And through the course of the session, we try to incite some debate. We've had a lot of discussion about PBL, but let's look at the pragmatic side, which Vinesh will take us through.